Hello everyone, my name is the Chess Dilwad. At least that's what I'm going to go off of because that's exactly how I play. Had some good play here, especially at the end, I guess. My opponent didn't play so well there, but I played well in the beginning, terrible in the middle, and I guess pretty well at the end. But there's three themes to think about in this move, or in this game. And that is, one, never give up, because I went from a completely dead lost position. I mean, very lost. I was way down in pieces and material and ended up drawing. And secondly, understanding general strategies, of which I didn't do, especially in the middle game. I got the opening very well. I think I understood the end game strategy pretty well. And that goes for white and black, right? So white has to understand the end game strategy fully. And I think they made some mistakes there, and that's why they ended up drawing a one position. And then lastly, again, how do you win a one position? And sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, especially if you're in like an over-the-board tournament. It's awful. So anyway, without further ado, let's get to it. Basically, this program, or this was a tournament game, and if I drew, I had a good shot at landing in the top three that advanced to the next round of the tournament, which I ended up doing. My opponent played the Ruy Lopez, and if you understand, it's e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, and then I picked, and then I put the question to the bishop, and my opponent picked the exchange variation, which is fine. I return back, and my opponent makes an opening error. You never want to take this pawn in the exchange variation, the e4 pawn, or e5 pawn rather, because it allows black to actually force either lose the knight or force white to not have the privilege to castle. You'll see. So white takes the pawn, which is a mistake, and I see it. I've played the Ruy many times, and I know it well. And anyway, this then obviously you have to move your knight, and the knight can't protect the pawn on this next move. So you're either going to lose the pawn or lose the knight. So they move their knight, and then I take the pawn and check, which then forces either the king to move, which you lose your privilege to castle, or you interpose with the queen, which means I'm going to trade, forcing the loss of castle and privileges for white, which is what I did. Okay, so the next strategy here is just develop our pieces. I just want to make a note here that if I were white, I'd want my rook, my h rook on e1, to oppose my king and be on that completely open file versus a semi-open file, and then it also allows my other rook later on in the game to get to the d file. Anyway, I castle, which is a good move. I castle queenside. White limits the scope of my bishop by pushing the h pawn 3 to h3. I develop my knight. King goes back. I continue to develop. And if you look, computer doesn't really like this bishop move that much. It says it's okay, but I like it because it literally controls the f5, e5, d5, and c5 squares. You know, you have a lot of control of your central squares here. So then, and my rook's also developed. So then my opponent decides to fianchetto the bishop, or at least so I thought, and I move my rook over to the e8 square, allowing it to bear down and be on a fully open file. So here's the thing. If you're black, this is the ideal position you want to be in, honestly. And if anybody thinks that's different, let me know, because that's the way I feel about it. This is a perfectly good, sound position. And now it's time to develop your what called middle game strategy to figure out how do you want to attack the king. So the right approach, I think, and I've never really run this through the computer much, but is to push my kingside pawns toward my opponent's kingside, and while my opponent's trying to catch up in development. But I don't, I blow it, and I develop my queenside pawns, which isn't bad according to the computer, but the bottom line is now my queenside is open to attack. These dark squares are open, and it's really the wrong side to develop with. Worse yet, I come up with a worse plan. So my opponent decides to pin my knight instead of fianchetto, pin my knight against my rook, which is a perfectly fine move. I love that question mark, exclamation mark. It's probably a better move because you have more scope with that bishop. and it's more protected. But the bottom line, I think it's a decently good move, such that I come up with a flawed concern. My concern here is if my opponent takes my knight, I'm going to take with the G pawn, and I'm going to have two double pawns, the F pawn, F doubles, and the C doubles. The problem is, I think that's a problem, when in fact it's not. Imagine a pawn, my G pawn's over here, my knight's gone. What it does, it allows me to control the B5 square, the F square, F5, E5, D5, and C5, and B5. I have literally almost the whole fifth rank controlled by my pieces. Black has only one square controlling it, the knight. So, or only one piece controlling one of those squares, the knight. So, honestly, I've got really good control here, and I don't even understand the position. I think I'm starting to grasp it. So I flawlessly move my king over, and my opponent develops and double attacks my knight, forcing that whole thing of that I didn't want to happen anyway. But the difference is my king's now on E7, blocking my rook, and not hidden away. And had I played my cards right and didn't push my pawn on the other side, I wouldn't have an open position on the right side. But anyway, I decided to put the question to the bishop anyway, and of course my opponent takes. They probably should have taken with the knight, and because it's an open position, and they could have taken with the knight first and keep the bishop alive, but they didn't. Anyway, opponent plays well, and I blunder. I make a blunder move. Everybody does them. I did it bad. I move my bishop here to try and double attack the knight and the rook, the knight on D4 and the rook on A1. But I blow it, and my opponent just kills my stupidity and decides to say, all right, I'm going to take advantage and take your pawn and fork your king, your rook, and your bishop alt 1. This is another point where you need to understand where your opponent can move and what their threats are. And I just ignored them. And in this case, I've now lost my position. I have now down a pawn and a piece, minor piece, and my king's in the middle here, and my rook's not even open anymore. All the stuff that I worked so hard for, I kind of blew. So I'm not going to go through all the middle game here, because basically the strategy for white in the middle game is pretty simple. Try to trade down, and black is avoid trading down, and somehow try to undouble the F pawn if you can do it. And push your pawns and hope for the best. And hopefully you can do, and maybe your king can come out and do some damage. But the bottom line here is I'm going to fast forward to move 68, because now we're really at the end game, and my opponent is now up by a piece, a minor piece, his knight to my nothing, and up 2 pawns at this point. So my opponent, the goal here, if you're white, again, how to win a 1 position, is to trade down, get my rook off the board, and be up a knight and all these pawns, and just push your pawns and win. I mean, I can't win. So my opponent does that. I do what I have to do. I'm trying to take either the knight or the pawn. I can't let this pawn go down, because if I go over here and let this pawn go, by trying to go back and take my opponent's other pawns, then I'll lose. So I have to take this pawn. So my opponent does exactly what they're supposed to do, trading. Trades off that rook, and good idea. Now it's got a knight and 4 pawns to my king and a pawn. Now they're going to lose that pawn, because I have to do that. I can't let it promote and walk down the board, and I can't just focus on that pawn and let these other pawns, this F pawn, just walk down unmolested. So I had no choice. I had to take, and my opponent went this way, and I want to show you the best move right from here is to move the G pawn. The reason the G pawn is the right pawn to move is because it keeps out. It allows my king to stay out of what's called the promotion square. And if you take the square, from H3, okay, to B8, that's one diagonal. Or if you want to take it from G8 to B3, however you want to look at it, that square, if the king is outside that square, that pawn is going to promote. Now, that's not true for the F pawn, because the F pawn is too far over. So if you move the G pawn, and I take, you can just take back if you're white, and I cannot catch that pawn. I can't get it in time. You can see this, right? Pretty simple. I'll go one more move, and you can see 2 moves, and it's going to take too many moves, right? Okay, so I'm going to promote, and the king can't catch. And it doesn't matter what you do in this situation, quite frankly. What I do, if I take and you take back, same thing, right? If I don't take, you move. Can I do it? Nope. Nope, can't do it, no matter what. So it doesn't matter what I do. I cannot, no matter what, you just push this pawn, and you push, take, and push. Nothing I can do to get this battle won. Now, but what happens in the game is my opponent pushes the f-pawn, which isn't that bad, because you can still do this, because all you want to do is have 2 passed pawns, if you can do it that way. So, of course, I have to come back and try to keep up with that pawn and not stay out of, I have to stay in that promotion square that we talked about. I got to do it again, right? But now I'm in significantly, so now I keep in the square. I'm going to be able to stop this pawn from promoting, because if the pawn just continues to go, and I just keep going as business as usual, I'm going to catch the pawn, see? Okay, so we're not going to go further on this. So my opponent makes the right move. All right, now, they support that pawn, which is the right move, okay? So I have to take. I can't just let 2 pawns come down here unmolested. So I have to take, so I do. Now my opponent should take back, and that protects that f-pawn, and then allows 2 passed pawns to come down here, which my king can't stop. And if you want to see how that works, I'll just do it real fast. Now I have to move back. So bottom line is, and if I do move back, then just move your pawns up or your king over, however you want to do it as far as the computer is concerned. And if I move over here to try and do that, king can go over here, right? And now you got 3 pieces. Now all these front squares are, so now my king has to come over because I can't go anywhere else, right? So now the problem is, it's an easy win, right? Because all you have to do is push this middle pawn. So now my king has to decide which way to go. Go to this side, or actually, I'm sorry, it only has 1 square to go. It goes to the g7 square, has to, where the king comes up, and bottom line, it gets control of either the f8 square or the g square. And that's the key. Your king has to get control of either of those 2 squares, and once it does, you're promoted. So that's a loss. So no matter what, you're lost. Well, what does my opponent do? My opponent ends up worried about that knight. And if I took the knight, I'll just make 1 point. If my opponent takes and I take the knight, I'm out of the square again. I'm out of that square. Now this pawn, this f-pawn, can go unmolested. I can't get back to get it. And you're done. So another blunder by my opponent. And this game ends up a very quick win for me, because my opponent's so worried about this knight that they forget that if I take both of these pawns, it's a drawn position. And I attack the knight. Okay, should have taken that pawn again, but they didn't. So I took it, which was right, because now, since that pawn's down, all I have to take is this pawn. It's a drawn position, and I force a draw. I come back. No matter what happens that night, I take the pawn, and it's drawn position. So I want to thank everyone. I hope this was hope it was very helpful, and I think I played the endgame pretty well, or more. My opponent probably played it poorly, but key here is always win a position like this if you're white. I mean, this is done, and try to do everything you can to do that, and understand those principles with those pawn moves, and take your time to think that through, because it's an easy win. So anyway, thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you later. This is my first video, and I hope it was helpful. Thank you.